Hey y'all, welcome to another Compliance Capers. I remembered to say it first this time. This is Betty with Compliant Healthcare Solutions, and I am joined by my good friend and colleague Sonal Patel from SP Collaborative. Hey Sonal.
Hey Betty, how are you? Good morning today. So
Good,
happy to
good.
be here. Yes.
Yes. It's nice. Again, we got a nice day going on out here, so I can't complain. It's probably 70 something and the sun's shining. It's a good day today. So we have a good winter day.
You're so lucky. Well, I have an unusual Boston-esque foggy landscape here outside my window. Very foggy. The snow is still on the ground, but this atmospheric cloudiness makes me feel like, Swampscott region in Massachusetts. So I don't know, it's very weird. Hopefully it'll lift. It's an odd thing to see in January here in the snow. It's just odd, and definitely cold. It's not as balmy as in Florida. So it's definitely winter here.
Yeah, it reminds me of Seattle, what you're
Yeah.
saying, like when I've been out there a couple times, and every time I've been out there, even when it's been like sunny they just get that just kind of hangs over everything. So yeah, that's not my kind of place. I have to say from a weather perspective. So I can see why grunge started there.
I love the grunge. Yes, I was a part of that grunge scene. Oh yeah. But when I lived in Seattle for 2 years, I experienced blissful weather. So what you're saying is that traditional gloomy, doomy Seattle weather. No, I had sunny, warm, was delightful, right? And when I lived out there, I did not know that it's so cool and moderate there that people don't have AC. They just don't, like built in their apartments and their homes, etc. And so, it got quite warm. It's like, wow, there's no AC. But so I was very happy there for my 2 years. Of course, there was rain showers, but the fog I definitely only experienced when I lived on the East Coast in Boston side. So that's why I had said that. But I guess, fog can happen anywhere, any time of year, obviously. But it's interesting that we both experienced it on different sides.
Yeah.
Funny.
All right. Well, we are running our month of February looking at advisory opinions, as everyone will recall. And once again, just wanted to put up the link to it. So if y'all want to go look at the advisory opinions, we're highlighting a few of them on these episodes this month. But if y'all want to go look through them as we suggested in the last episode to make sure, or the first episode on this month, to go look through and see if anything applies to you, that kind of thing. Here's the link for y'all so that y'all can go check it out. But today's advisory opinion that we're going to discuss is an unfavorable one. So last episode, we did a favorable one where the OIG was like, yeah, no, we're okay. We're good with it. This time they were like, not so much. So this is advisory opinion number 23-08. And it was put out in October of 2023, which is also another important thing to look at those dates, because even if you find something that's applicable to your practice and you look at it and maybe it's an advisory opinion from like 4 years ago, there may be regulations that have changed and things that have changed. So it might not be the same opinion today. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at them, that, the more recent ones, of course, would be the ones that truly would probably be most applicable to the practice. But Sonal, this is regarding a company that is looking to offer cochlear. They do cochlear implants, and they're looking to try to kind of entice or sweeten the deal a little bit with people trying to get them to use their cochlear devices. So do you want to run us through this one?
Yeah, sure. This one was rather interesting, right? When we researched the list from the OIG website, because, when we've been in healthcare for a little bit of time now, right, we understand that this sort of inducement, this enticing type of behavior is just not a good look for the government programs, right? There are so many violations that you could incur. And the way this particular advisory opinion was written up, again, with all of the facts from the device company asking these questions, the way this advisory opinion is laid out is so detailed in the sense that, right off the bat, they are disclosing that as the requestor, they are a device company, and they are the ones who are providing the cochlear implant device. It's kind of a dual system that they do provide to patients, right, within these hospital systems, these ASCs, et cetera. So the patients are receiving their cochlear device implants. And then they're also saying, well, in addition, these patients may need an additional hearing aid. And so we would like to provide that hearing aid, again, by our company for free. And so it's really, really fascinating when you read the details of the advisory opinion, right? Again, it's laid out through the legal analyses, et cetera. They talk about the anti-kickback statute, the beneficiary inducements, CMPs, et cetera. So they literally talk about it in detail. But the most important finding, in my opinion, and you can agree, disagree, is the certified cost amount that this company provided for the hearing aid, right? So yes, it's going to be provided for free, hypothetically, to these people, but they certified that the value, the monetary value of the device was well over the safe harbor amount, which is only $570. That's it. And their quote unquote free hearing aid was roughly between $1,100 to $2,200 in value. So I found that part to be fascinating, that they certified it that way, but they didn't know, and they didn't dig deep enough into these things that are publicly known. There's that safe harbor, and the limit there for that year that was valid was for $570. So I thought that was fascinating, that they put a kibosh to it. Like, yeah, no, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't. Yeah.
Well, and the thing, what's interesting too to me is when you first looked at it, well, Medicare doesn't cover hearing aids.
Yeah.
They never have. They're, that's one of the things that they're just like, no, you got to pay for that yourself. So, some people, and maybe that's where this company was thinking, was like, well, we're not getting Medicare to pay for it, so why can't we just give it to people then? Like maybe that was their thought. I'm not sure. But Medicare doesn't cover hearing aids. So the patient would be having to pay for this then themselves if they did it. But then, so it turns into, if you think it through from that compliance perspective, then it's kind of like a bribe,
Right.
We'll give you something that's could be over $2,000, if you get your cochlear implant with us. The other thing I found was interesting in this one too, because it kind of relates to the last one for the month we're going to do, is that they're not the only company that does cochlear implants.
That's right.
There's many other companies that have them. And for those of y'all that are listening too, if you're not aware, so if it's a newer people that are listening to us, or it's not your specialty, cochlear implants, they're the devices that they will use that, depending on the kind they do, they have the anchoring ones, and then they have the magnetic ones now that are really cool. Those new ones that they put the magnet inside and then they just attach, and the magnet from the outside, goes to the inside. So, these are for people that, will have they've been born with something missing in their auditory system. The one I always use when I used to teach about CPT, when we would get to this section, was Rush Limbaugh. For those of y'all that are familiar with Mr. Limbaugh, he was a radio talk show host, And he had started to lose his hearing. He was going deaf. And he didn't want anybody to know because obviously he's a radio talk show host. It's kind of hard to do if you're deaf.
Business, right.
And so as his hearing got worse and worse, what they would do is when people would call, they would put the questions, like they would have those teleprompters. And so their questions would show up and he would read what they were asking and then respond to them. And so they kept it hidden for a long time. And then he totally lost it. And so they gave him cochlear devices. And Miss America, we had one deaf Miss America that had cochlear implants. And so what the cochlear implant does, it instead of like a hearing aid where, your certain sounds don't filter through, or, you've been exposed to loud noises for a long time. And so now you have, those kinds of issues, and they just put the little device in your ear to kind of magnify things. The cochlear device kind of goes in, they implant part of it, and then the other part of it goes on the outside. And if you have the magnetic one, it just kind of magnetizes to it. But if not, they suture it down and they thread it through, and the device goes into your auditory canal. And what it does is, let's say your one of the pieces was missing inside your inner ear. So when you hear, it's like that domino effect of the vibration that goes, and then it goes into the actual organ in the inside of the ear, which then goes to the brain. So if part of that is missing, then the connection just kind of stops. Like if you pull a domino out when you're running dominoes, it just stops, right? So this device goes through and it makes the vibration for you, which then goes into the brain to where you hear the sound. And it's an amazing thing. And I have seen people, you see those videos where it's a little baby that they put the device in that's never heard anything.
Yeah.
And then the mom,
it is beautiful.
They're all everybody's crying, and so that's what we're talking about with the cochlear implant. So it's a device that's different than a hearing aid. So in this kind of case, they're talking about sometimes patients may need both, which they call bimodal, so two modes. So they have the cochlear device in one ear and then a hearing aid in the other ear. And so this company wants to give them the hearing aid if they get the cochlear device from them. So I think that's kind of the crux of the issue here, is that it's a lot of money that they're giving to the patient to have them, and then they will bill Medicare for the cochlear device. So they're kind of backdooring that, submitting to a federal healthcare program to get that word that I can't say from
remuneration, right? Oh, I have plenty of things that I can't say properly either, like beneficiary. I'd rather just say patient. Like beneficiary for me is way too, I trip over that word all the time.
Well, I can't say
specific. Yeah. Okay. Specific. Yeah.
I'm like, y'all know what I'm trying to say. I'm like, concentrated. It's
yeah, we have our own backdoor ways of getting around things that we'll stumble over too. So, right.
Using the help of somebody standing next to you is always good. I'm like, you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, but that was a great explanation. That was a great explanation for the cochlear device implant, right? And how the actual device functions and why the patients require it, right? It's much more serious than a simple tinnitus, et cetera, from hearing Nirvana at extra loud volume. Speaking of our grunge metal, our amazing stuff in Seattle, right? But anyway, so I found it to be fascinating, right? And then they definitely go into the details of, how the statutes are being implicated and triggered, right? And why they put a kibosh on it, and they literally outline it to you. And again, that most important thing that I found was that the free hearing aid would be conditioned on the purchase of the device. And requester expects that both patients and providers would be aware that requester offers and provides the hearing aid for free. Requester certified that the hearing aid would be manufactured by a third-party hearing aid manufacturer, and the cost of that hearing aid would range from $1,880 to $2,240. So that was the specific part that I just poo-pooed at. I was like, well, you're telling them right there that this is the monetary value, right?
Yeah.
So even if they're sending a different person to make it, as it just said, still cost, right? It doesn't fall within the safe harbor of $570, where they do disclose that in a footnote as well in the actual round. So the entire document is incredibly fascinating, again, and well detailed from whoever, all of the attorneys at the OIG. I find these types of documents to be, incredibly researched, right? They provide us with every link to every statute, every reg. We can go ahead and follow those links through and through, and go ahead and digest all of the information that follows through in those links. So I personally love these types of advisory opinions, even when they're unfavorable, because you yourself can walk away with so much education as to where these types of rationale come from, right? Yeah. And like you said in the beginning, things definitely change in healthcare all of the time. So you really have to keep current on these types of advisory opinions, because a lot of these footnotes will change, right? And the links will go to a fresher, viewpoint on what is going on and what stance is currently being used for their advice. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Also, I like that. In the advisory opinions, again, we kind of discussed this on the first one, we ran down what they were. In the factual background that they give, that the requestor had given them this information, what I found interesting too is that one of the things that the requestor certified, which means it was something they filled out in that template when they were asking it, that in most cases, particular patient needs do not make the device that they have a more clinically appropriate option from a cochlear implant and sound processor manufactured by any other device manufacturer. So they're kind of, when you fill these things out, you have to tell the truth, or else you're not going to get a correct advisory opinion. Now, you can fluff it all up and try to, make it sound whatever, but then the advisory opinion you get is only going to be based on the facts you gave. So if you lie, they might tell you yes, but it doesn't really mean yes. So, they put on there, yes, we do these. There's other companies that do these, and ours isn't any more special than anybody else's.
That's
so
what
it's
they
not
said.
like they had some kind of new processing thing, or they had some kind of trademark special secret thing that they did that made theirs over and above different than everybody else's. They're like, nope, ours is just like the other ones that are offered. We just want to say, hey, if you take ours, we'll give you a free hearing aid.
Right.
So, they, in getting an advisory opinion, they do ask you for the complete facts of everything that's going on. And it is, imperative to the requestor to fill everything out completely and honestly if they want an honest opinion, because it's not going to do you any good. And you're not going to be able to defend yourself by saying, well, we got an advisory opinion that said it was okay, if they look inside it and found that you were lying. So, they had to lay out all the facts. And so looking at the factual background is also important. If y'all are looking to research, like let's say that you have a company that does this, you'll want to look at the factual backgrounds and see, do the facts match the facts that you're thinking about doing. Is it the same kind of thing? And because some of those little differences, like we've been saying, that they could make whatever the opinion would be different for you, but at least you can get an idea, you know. But this one was kind of a flat out, you know, I really don't think so, buddy. You know, so when you get to, then they have their legal analysis, which they went through with the anti-kickback statutes and the civil monetary penalties, like you were saying. So they kind of like lay it out there, and then they analyze it from each perspective too, so that, you know, you can kind of see that. But I think there's a lot, and these things are usually pretty lengthy as far as the information that you're given. I mean, usually they're like 8 pages long. So, I mean, it's not like it's a 2-paragraph thing saying, yeah, no, we don't like this, or, you know, they really give the judgment and the analysis on them. So that's another thing that for people that are watching, you know, it is really good. You can kind of dig into these and really get a better understanding if you're interested in compliance, you're interested in auditing, you know, things to put in your toolbox.
Yes.
As we've been saying, it is to kind of see what's out there for whatever your particular specialty or your particular client is. If they're asking you, hey, we want to do this, what do you think? You know, this is one of the places as a consultant that I would go check and see, well, you know, the OIG did put out an advisory opinion that kind of matches what that is, and this is what they said. So, you know, and I think it can be a useful tool in ways like that. Excuse me. But their conclusion, they just kind of said, you know, it would generate prohibitive payment under the federal anti-kickback statute. And if the requisite intent was present, which would be, you know, come by ours just because we're giving this to you, and then they're going to get payment from Medicare. So it would constitute grounds for imposition of sanctions under sections 1128A, A7 and 1128B7 of the Act. And it would generate prohibitive
remuneration
under the beneficiary inducements, civil monetary penalties, which would constitute grounds for the imposition of sanctions under the beneficiary inducements, CMPs, for the same sections as it relates to the commission of acts described under that. So not only, you know, is it hitting the anti-kickback, but they're saying, you know, you're under that area now where they can start also tacking on those civil monetary penalties. And, you know, I don't know your thoughts, but I find it sometimes the payback itself is bad. Of course, you never want to have to pay the money back, but it's those civil monetary penalties. That's where you can really start racking up, you know, those fines and penalties is where those amounts just start blowing up to where you could say, well, yeah, but I was only paid X amount for these and it was not that much. And that's where sometimes I think practices are like, yeah, but it's not really that much money. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's not the only money that you'd have to pay back. You know, it's the penalties that start going, and those can get into the stratosphere if you're talking about $10,000 for every claim or $15,000 for every day that this was done. And, you know, that's where you see these things to where it's multi-millions of dollars that these places are being kind of gone after by the OIG, right?
Absolutely. You know, that's exactly right. That's where it's really, really helpful that you and I continue to have these compliance capers conversations, right? Because so many of our private practice physicians just aren't aware of the, you know, volume of these fines that can be accrued, right? So you said that spot on. It's literally claim by claim. You know, it's not just, oh, but I only did this, you know, 4 times in the year. No, they will slap on the additional penalty, the additional fine, right, on top of what you sent out to them. So yeah, we'll definitely include more thorough information on these types of regulations, what the current fines are, because they do change from time to time. And they have increased rather exponentially in recent years. So that's also a good thing to know, and just reemphasize that the continued scrutiny in healthcare is only going up, unfortunately, right? That's just what we've been seeing. Things are definitely escalating. The government takes on a different focus, different industries, which we will touch on in our series on compliance capers, like all of the hot areas, which specialty is being, in the crosshairs for 2024. There's so much going on in 2024, right? So for us to stay current, we should have those conversations here at the end of the week on Fridays as a quick recap to what's been going on in the news. I think that would be a really important conversation. But these advisory opinions, like you stated before, definitely, I agree with you. As consultants, as people who provide some sort of educational information to our clients, to our compliance folks, other people who code, etc. These types of documents are really, really good to have in our toolbox. So we can also understand more thoroughly, what these particular links in the footnotes go to, right? Because we also need to be aware of these various specialties, right? Like for our ENT types of providers, right? These folks understand what these devices do, what they can do for their patient population. So it's a really good thing when documents like this come out. We can also dig in the weeds for these advisory opinions and really start to understand the nitty-gritty of why they're saying no for this particular case. For you and I, it's common sense to be like, there's no way you can do this, right? Because it's literally tit for tat. Like, you can't do that in healthcare. Maybe in other industries, it's no big deal. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, it's no biggie. But this is healthcare. Like, you just can't do that here. So regardless, I think these advisory opinions are meaningful for all of us in this space to use more in the everyday work that we do. It just makes sense for ourselves and then for the work that we do for our clients. I think it's mutually a great thing. And so thank you to the OIG for and your team of people. Thank you for providing us with this terrific educational information. That's how I like to look at it.
Yeah.
It's
as we've said on some of the previous ones, what we like to do is try to give people, excuse me, different things that maybe they're not aware of that are out there, or they've heard it, but they've never really dug into it because they just don't have time because they're doing the work of, like 5 people at their practice, so we try to, that's why we wanted to kind of do these spotted things first, like, look at the advisory opinions for the whole month of February so that people really could kind of get an idea of how they're set up and I didn't know that was there. That's a really good thing for me to be able to check, for my practice, especially when you're responsible, or if you're responsible, you have the physicians, the APPs coming to you and saying, hey, we want to do this, and they want to know what you think about it. And you always have that, with the spidey sense, right?
Yes, we do.
When you're sitting there and one of the docs will come up and say, hey, blah, blah, blah. And you just kind of go, oh no. But you tell them you don't think that's a good idea. And their very first thing back to you is, show me why. Show me why I can't. Yep. And then, but they want to see it. And so this is a good place. If you know that something is kind of not sitting right with you, that those things are starting to fire off, this is a good place to check for those kind of things. And if there is one, you can say, this is from the OIG, and they're saying, no, we shouldn't do that. So that's what I'm backing this up with, so that you have something. It's always great to have a resource, especially if you're telling them something they don't want to hear. If they want to do something, then, it's great to have something also to say, hey, this one was favorable, so I think we're on good standing, to make everybody feel more comfortable. But when somebody really wants to do something, especially when they're like a practice owner, sometimes it's hard for them to kind of just give it up, and the idea of, they could get in trouble for it. And sometimes it's not that they're doing it for sneaky purposes, or they may just be trying to say, hey, I just want to help my patients out. And that's great. But you can't do it to a point of where it's going to get yourself and your practice in trouble, because then you can't help anybody.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's so bad, right? Like when you look at first glance at this particular advisory opinion that we found for hearing aids, it's a wonderful thing. Like, you're trying to help people. Okay, what's the problem, right? But you've got to dig deeper. So what you said was absolutely true. As consultants, you're totally right. Dr. Smith comes in and is like, why can't I do this? This is a great idea because Bob down the road is doing this and he's getting paid, right? We get that every day. Every day we get questions like that from Dr. Smith, who talks about his friend Bob, who's also a doctor. He gets paid for this great thing. And then our Dr. Smith comes in and asks us, and our spidey senses fire off, like you said. But instead of just saying a quick, no way, Jose, right? We say, we will get back to you. Because what consultants like Betty and I do is we dig in the weeds. We will provide the facts, the resources, where and who is saying why you can't do this, right? So it takes a lot of time to provide educational guidance to these types of clients who come in and say, well, right, we don't want to get Bob into any trouble, right? Because we don't know Bob. I'm sure he's a great doctor, but we don't know him, right? We're talking about our provider, Dr. Smith. So we're trying to keep him clean and out of trouble, right? So when we come back with our document of research and advice and resources, we're stating, no, well, based on all of this evidence from the OIG in these particular cases, we're probably going to suggest you don't start up that type of a service line, right? And of course, you and I have attorneys that we work with every day on speed dial. We're like, you can also please use your trusted attorney. If you don't have one, here are a list of ours. But please, talk to them. They can advise you, also provide you with amazing information on how to start something. First off, compliantly, right? You have to do it compliantly. You can't just be the cowboy in the room who's doing whatever you want. Those days of healthcare are long gone, especially if you're doing things for the federal government, right? That's all of our Medicare, Medicaid, our TRICARES, our VAs, all of that stuff. Everybody has policies and regs that you have to follow to remain in compliance. But yeah, those are great points, Betty, that, these types of documents are useful to our profession, not just ourselves as the educators, but of course to all of the providers that are out there, physicians, APPs, our pharmacists, right? Everybody. So yeah.
Great additions and great closing statements. And, just like your mother always said, if Dr. Bob was jumping off the bridge.
You don't want to do that. Just because no, we don't just follow the sheep mentality. No, you have to think for yourselves critically and make the right decisions for your business practices, right? Like you can't just follow Dr. Bob off the cliff. Please don't do it.
All right. Well, so we've talked about Seattle and Boston and grunge, and we just covered a whole lot of stuff today.
We did fun today. Yes.
So I hope everybody enjoyed all of our rambling discussion here that centered on an unfavorable OIG advisory opinion. And we will close out the next one for the final one of February with another favorable one. So Sonal and I decided, we were going to give a little love since it's February. At the end of the month, we wanted to do positive. So we'll come back with another favorable one to discuss with y'all next week. So thanks for joining us today. And we will see y'all next Friday on the next Compliance Keepers. Thanks
so much, everybody. See you next week. Bye.